contents on this channel are for learning, insight, and introspection.
Syndrome is when you have the skills or qualifications for a job or a position, but somehow you still feel as if you don't belong, or as if you somehow got lucky, or somehow you trick people into thinking that you belong there. And it's really interesting because it's not a real condition recognized by the DSM-5, the Bible of Psychiatry. However, none of us would deny that it's not real. So initially, the research was showing that men and women were experiencing imposter syndrome at the same rates. But recent studies are showing that this is actually not the case. Some more recent studies are showing that women may be more likely to experience imposter syndrome than men. Some recent studies are showing that women and men express imposter syndrome differently. For example, if a man experiences imposter syndrome, some men will underperform or kind of bow out, kind of like try to duck under the radar. Whereas women, when they experience imposter syndrome, some of them will start to overperform, overachieve, and get burned out. Very interesting. Also, some studies are showing that underrepresented minorities and certain groups from lower socioeconomic brackets experience imposter syndrome more than other groups. Also, students are more at risk for imposter syndrome, and people in certain industries such as healthcare and high-stakes industries are more at risk for imposter syndrome. I find this particularly interesting because I talk about this in my research and in my book, High Functioning, because high functioning depression is when on the outside you look fine, you look like you're high achieving, but on the inside you're really struggling. And a lot of people with high functioning depression will report having imposter syndrome.
Hey YouTube, you have made your way back to Mind Your Mind with Just Justified. So you saw what we are talking about today, the imposter syndrome. So the definition of imposter syndrome is, it is the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So in that first video, you heard her say that the imposter syndrome is not recognized by the DSM-5, right? But many of us can relate to experiencing it. Sometimes feeling like what you achieved was not exactly where you belong. You feel kind of out of place, but she touched on how it affects also women and men differently, also students and certain industries. So that was pretty interesting what she talked about in that video. Let's look at the next video about imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. This past week, I had 8 coaching calls with executive leaders. Some of them were really new, some were very experienced. But interestingly, each coaching call revealed the same theme. They were all dealing with imposter syndrome. And if they were being honest, it wasn't that they were dealing with imposter syndrome, they were actually dealing with unhealthy comparisons. So it wasn't that they doubted their ability to do their job, it's that they believed everyone else was doing a better job. This is one of the hardest forms of interpersonal conflict that we have to deal with, when your insecurity isn't tied to your own shortcomings, but to someone else's achievement. We often talk about the importance of ignoring outside voices that try to bring us down, but sometimes we have to confront the inner voices that bring us down. Unhealthy comparisons are a form of negative self-talk, and if you only focus on where you struggle and where someone else shines, you'll never see yourself fairly or honestly. So instead of talking to yourself about how great someone else is, I want you to talk to you about how great you are. I want you to put blinders on and keep other people's name out of your mouth and out of your head. Tune out the voices that distract you, both the outside voices and the inside voices, so you can lock in and commit to becoming a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. That's how you'll grow.
Exactly. Sorry. He stated that the imposter syndrome was revealed from comparisons. That's how we found out a lot about the imposter syndrome, because when you find yourself comparing, so looking at others' achievements rather than gauging your own achievements, that can warp your progress and how you view yourself. He just suggested tuning out the outside voices. So this next video breaks this down into five types of imposters, right? Let's check it out.
The perfectionist, extremely high expectations. Even if 99% of the goal is achieved, I still feel like a failure. The expert needs to know every single piece of information before doing something, or else they feel incompetent. I'm afraid to ask questions and look stupid. The natural genius believes that if they have to struggle to learn something, it's proof they're not good enough. I restrict myself to skills that only come easily. The soloist thinks they need to accomplish everything on their own. I never ask for help because I equate it to weakness. The superhero pushes themselves to work harder than everybody else to prove they aren't a fraud. I feel the need to excel at everything in life.
So did you resonate with any of these types? Right? Interesting. I know some of you are like, ooh, okay, I think I probably have a little bit of the imposter syndrome thing going on. But here is another perspective of imposter syndrome. You know, I love my girl Mel Robbins. I love this one. I love her mind. So here she is.
Syndrome is a really good thing, because when you feel like an imposter in a role, that's just a fancy way of saying you're trying something new. And so starting today, if you're in the game of building confidence, everybody, you got to open your arms. You got to reach out for that imposter syndrome, because if you don't have imposter syndrome, you're not doing anything uncomfortable. And if there's one thing I've learned in life, is that it's only by making yourself face things that are uncomfortable that you're going to grow into the best version of yourself.
So that was a different perspective a little bit, right? But she's looking at imposter syndrome in a sense as a good thing, or can be turned into a good thing, because you're facing things that may be uncomfortable to you, but you're facing it even so. And, you know, of course, you're going to feel that doubt and everything sometimes or whatever, but you're still facing it. And which is, even though you may feel out of place or whatever like that, you're still doing it. So here are some problem coping mechanisms associated with imposter syndrome. All right. Let me see if I could make that a little bit bigger. Maybe not. Okay. So basically it says, oh, you know what? I could actually put myself a little bit smaller. All right. So it says for some coping mechanisms associated with imposter syndrome, right? So we have the over functioning side. That's where you're working long hours, difficulty delegating, extreme attention to detail, trouble switching off, over preparing, and perfectionism. Then on the other side of it, we have the under functioning, which is missing opportunities, procrastinating, avoiding difficult conversations, failing to be assertive, difficulty asking for help, and staying under the radar. Like, I think I've seen probably times when it's been like either end, like over functioning or under functioning. I've seen times where I've been like on either ends, you know? So have you ever experienced this? Let me know. You know, this was kind of interesting to look into. So here's a motivational word for the individual who may be experiencing the imposter syndrome.
struggling with the question of whether or not you are enough. Let this be the last day that you feel like you have this imposter syndrome. You are ready. You would not be in this space with an opportunity in front of you if you were not intellectually ready, if you had not had experiences that will allow you to go forward successfully, if you didn't have people in your network that might have already been there and done that. Now, if you're not feeling confident in yourself and somebody has given you an opportunity, until you can grab a hold to your own worth, borrow their confidence in you. Nobody chose you because they thought you were going to fail. Somebody gave you this opportunity because they saw in you somebody who could make rain. So, honey, make rain.
So what do you think? That was a little encouraging right there, right? So on the back of what she just said in that video, before I get to that picture, I want to leave with you these words, which states, and it was across her screen at the beginning. It says, "You are enough." Stop doubting yourself, comparing yourself, or shortchanging yourself. Many people do not start their journey with success. And that's where this picture come in that I wanted to show after this one. So this picture right here. So as you can see, there is a man standing on a stage juggling plates, right? And you see all what's behind him. So this reminds me with this man juggling dishes, and behind him all those broken dishes that someone may look at him front stage juggling, and they might be like, oh, they may feel unaccomplished, they may feel less than, like, oh my goodness, he's so good, whatever, and they're comparing their skill to his, which that's where the problem lies, because unbeknownst to them are all those broken dishes and failures he had before his juggling success, So what I can say is work on your own skill. I'll put this a little bit bigger so you can kind of see, but work on your own skill. Create your own goals and timeline. You are enough. And remember, what consumes your mind controls your life. Mind your mind. And with that, I say peace.